All right. How we doing, guys? Sam here with you. It's Wednesday, the 13th of March, and today we're looking at crypto. So we poll our members, and today, by request, first up here is is Ripple to the dollar tether. Now, I've got a count on this. This is a challenging count. I'm working from the September high here, trying to get some a count here that makes sense. Now that's not that's not our absolute high here. This is when it hits Binance and we just go straight down. So just working from this pivot here to see if we can come up with a count here that makes sense, and then something that perhaps there'd be something that's tradable here. So there is this tendency for Ripple to make these double bottoms. So I've just highlighted the first one here. We've got one little wick takes us through, but essentially you'd call that a double bottom, and then we repeat the same thing here. So looking at this, I have to tell you that if I brought this chart up and it was blank and having worked through a count here, I would tell you this would not meet my criterion for anything to be trading, at least not at the moment. It's just too... the count here it could be interpreted a couple of different ways, right? Yeah, sure, I understand that can often be the case with Elliott Wave, but we can't come up with a high probability count here or a zone. Essentially we need more information. So I would consider this not anything I would be pursuing for a new trade. Now I think there's some value here in working through the count for the educational value of it. But I don't know we're sitting here looking at a trade, because we've got some volatility here that's creating a count that you really couldn't, I put it this way, I wouldn't want to bet on this count. But that said, now there are some interesting things technically here that I think are worth reviewing. So just working from, obviously, right? So we're just going to grab the highest pivot here, and I'm just going to go to the first low that we hit here. So this is a little curious. So we get, if I get right on there. Right, there we go. Okay, so here's your first algo play. So we come, right, no surprise, we get the retrace, we go right to the 50. Now here we come up short of the target. But interestingly, then we get a bounce to the 38, and then eventually we get it here. So the algos get it. Now, if you were trading this, you know, it's always the question of, is that's too far for a front run? So so this is always a bit of a challenge when we can't quickly identify what the algorithm did last. So one thought is, did they rework it to a lower pivot? Well, then you look here and you go, okay, the full length of this ABC, right? We know that they like that pattern here. So I've got this labeled as a completed ABC, which would set up for a W given what's to follow. But looking at that, then you kind of have the conundrum here going, is that a front run on the 50? It's a bit too shy of the 50 for me to immediately think, oh, it's just a front run. But then, of course, remember, as I will always remind you, there is always an algorithm on the other side. So if I look here, this looks to me like they may very well, this may be just an algorithm here. So here's the reaction at the 50. Here we are in the golden zone. They actually get to and through target here. So is this just another algorithm here kicking in and getting out at this target? It's hard to say, right? But then look at the reaction down here. So as I always try to remind you, we can identify the algorithm not just by the fact that we get between the 50 and the 618. It's the reaction at the target that tells you it was an algorithm. Right? So as they take profit here, and that high probability when we're that close that's a front run on that algo target. So given that reaction, that's what I would lean into here. I think that likely we've got competing algorithms here. We just don't make the 50 here. But this reaction here, and then we get our second double bottom right on that algo target. Interesting. We don't get, it's not quite as good here. So if I pull from this thinking, well, what would they use next? Again, we're kind of in between. Like here, we're in between the 38 and the 50. Here we're in between. So this would be a reasonable spot. Now again, always an algorithm on the other side. So if we look here at this for this ABC, which I've got identified as an X wave. So if I take my low here up to my A, Well, again, it's a little bit, there's a lack of precision here. So yes, we get the first push here at the 50. So I think the B, we'd have to allow for an A, B, C in here. So you have a slight truncation in the C of the B. But this is close enough to the front run. So I think this is also likely algorithmic activity here. They get easily two, almost make second target here in blue. That's the -618. It kind of leaves you wondering, going, well, is there any other fib relationship here that might be in play? So length of the A projected from the absolute low, well, now what do we get? We get exactly 100 here. So it's always a process of saying, why does it stop there? Right? Could it be just we hit previous supply? Maybe. When I see something like this where we have this precision, now note here, I'm using the lowest, get right on that. I'm using the lowest pivot here, on the assumption algorithm's not going to take into account a truncated C of the B wave. It's just going to work from dominant pivot. So swing low, swing high. Here's my lowest pivot. I get the 100 to the tick. So I'm inclined to think that's what's causing this move down. Now it gets very complicated here. So we get this done. And we can pull some of this off here now just to clear up the chart. So let me take off the big one. Now we've got this secondary here. Now take note here, that target is down here, is unrealized. So purely off of the algo play, you can look at this and say, well, one more push down here wouldn't be terribly surprising. This target will not move. There's an algorithm that will stay short here until either it's stopped out on this 65 or they make their target here. So again, of course, we pull again from this, saying, okay, if that is correctly identified where we come into this double bottom here, well, now we're just making the 23. So let me pull this one off just to clear it up a little bit. So again, there's a lack of precision here. We're not coming right up to clearly identify what the algorithms did last. So then we start looking at an Elliott count that would make sense. Do we have a solid low here? Well, it's a little bit of a push to get 5 out of this, right? You gotta either go 1, 2. You got to get there's a little double bottom down there. It's just not a clean count. So this is where I started here. This could be interpreted a couple of different ways. So you could probably look at it as a 1, 2, 3, right? So you're gonna have to check that distance here. I don't think it's gonna be quite long enough. So you'd be, if you were thinking 1, 2, 3, and we have some sort of an ABC here, and you're anticipating one more move down, well, you'd have to pay attention to the length of this swing relative to the next swing, so that you don't invalidate the count, letting the third be the shortest. I think so. This is not unreasonable. There's a lot of the majors have this same problem down here on this last swing down. Hard to dig a clear 5 out of it. But the double bottom, so Elliott count aside, we can just look at this double bottom here and say, all right, well, obviously that's where demand comes into the market. We haven't really gotten a whole lot of traction coming off of that. And then we have this extreme volatility here where we're creating a bit of a triangle here. We've got good trend line support here, up and down. So I think, so if it's correctly identified, so this count is valid. We don't have any invalidation here. Yeah, I understand. There's a little bit of a push here to get 5 in that C wave. But if that's ABC coming down here, well, here you got some problems, some challenges here. So coming off of that, if this is our absolute low here, well, we're looking for a motive wave to come off of it. So it's no question we've got an ugly count here. But there's a candidate here for a leading diagonal, although we've got to allow for a truncation in the 5th. Now, this is just a wick pump that gets through, so it's not out of bounds, but you always prefer, particularly if you're going to put money on the line, to not have to allow for an anomaly. The reason I think these are related, because remember, in a diagonal, we're looking for the reaction here at the 4. So we want to look for the swing relationship between the start of the 1 and the pivot of the 3rd. Now here is my proposed 3rd. Well, note here we come right to the 50, right to the Vegas wave, right to the point of control here, at least is what I have as visible range. So here's the kick. So, but again, we fail. So then we get this crazy volatility here where we're swinging down, immediately retracing it, then all the way back down again now in this process. So this kind of a chop is why I would say if I pull this up and this is what I see, next chart as far as I'm concerned. There's no, unless you're already in it and trying to get a handle as to where might be an appropriate place to either bail, get short, or get long. I don't see any reason to be pursuing a new trade here. It's just too much chop. There's no clarity here. There's no trend we can really identify. There could be one more push lower just as easily as there could be a push higher. So for a new trade, yeah, I don't think you have one here. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't develop into something that were interesting. So if this is going to push, well, you can see we get a little impulse here coming off of this proposed, right? If this is A, B, again, you'd have to allow for a truncated C here. And you've got, well, there's a little algo play here. So if I look at this swing, right? So here's right to the 50, yet again, denied the target, right? Just because there's a target there, as I will remind you, doesn't mean that there must be, that must be realized, right? That's just, on one side, always going to fail. Even pulling to the absolute low, well, what have we done now? We just tagged the golden zone. So so an algorithm, I promise you, is setting up to sell, and that will stay short until it gets that. Well, it's a tricky one. So maybe the second pivot, now we've got a slight break, so I'd look all the way back. Now I know we have a lower low here, so even if we go here, we're still golden zone. Algorithm's not going to care about an Elliott count, so this, you don't have enough here to call that a completed correction, so you got to go A, B, C, and then you're kind of stuck in that same problem. Looks like you got to go A, B, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a stretch. It's just not clean enough. So when you're that unsure about what the count is, my first suggestion is always, don't force a trade when there really is not one there. This could develop, right? We get, if this is going to trade as 1, 2, and we've gone yet again 1, 2, and we're starting in the process of going into our third, well, this could start to improve. But right now, we're just stuck in a range. We're going sideways, like most of crypto. Well, there are certainly, of course, a few exceptions, but this is just too ugly to chase anything, long or short. What's your advantage, right? There is no probability here. There's not enough to support the idea that it's time to be looking at a long here, right? And this may be a generous count here, coming up with a leading diagonal with a truncated fifth. You could likely just interpret this as an ABC and maybe a 1, 2. See this. So what do you do with that, right? Again, why? There's so many choices in crypto. So why would you? Well, move outside of crypto would be my suggestion here. There's not a lot of great trading in crypto at the moment. There's a few, right? A few that we've noted. But here, until you get out of this range, until I get something that's going to suggest, oh, okay, well, maybe I've got a true third going in. I've got an impulse coming. I just got chop. And I'm struggling to get a count that really completes anywhere. Yeah, maybe I can get a 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to dig so you have a double bottom here into a very shallow 5. Just not good enough. Right, so my suggestion, don't pursue anything new here until we at least get out of this little triangle action that we're in right now. There's just not enough there to support the idea. So with that, I will sign off. I'm going to do one more today. So one to be watching, of course, but nothing to pursue at the moment. All right, guys, back.